Rookie wide receiver Josh Downs appears to be the Colts' brightest young star in 2023. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Colts podcast. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, everyone. I'm Zach Hicks, your guys' favorite co-host here over on Locked On Colts. You guys can also find my work over at horseshoehuddle.com, where I bring you all the film and analysis that you could ever wish to see over there at horseshoehuddle.com again. And this is Locked On Colts podcast. We're here talking during the bye week, talking all about, I think the bye week is perfect for reflection and projection. That's really where you can go. So you can reflect on what's happened throughout the year, and you can project for how the year is going to finish off. So we're going to kind of follow that same mold here on today's episode. The first two segments, we're going to reflect on some of the biggest bright spots and winners of this Colts team so far. And then we're going to also look at the players who, just need to step up during the second half of the season, the players that we need to see more from going forward the rest of the year. And then finally, we're going to close this show off by talking about the future outlook for the Colts this season. Do they have a chance at the playoffs? Are they a 500 team, or are they destined for another top 10 pick? We're going to talk about all that in the last segment. But first, let's kick it off with some of the bright spots on this team. We want to kick off this show with a positive note. And again, this is the bye week. It's the bye week. We're going to look back on a lot of things that happened this year, some things maybe in the preseason that we expected that just haven't really happened. And I think one of the biggest talking points throughout the entire preseason was, what are the Colts going to do at right guard? Are the Colts going to stay with that young guy that they are, projecting to start all offseason like they did last year with Danny Pinter at right guard, where they all offseason, they're saying we're rolling with Danny Pinter. And all of us are like, oh no, maybe we shouldn't roll with Danny Pinter, maybe get some veteran help in there. They didn't do that, and Pinter was a disaster for the Colts. This year, they seemingly did the same thing, but with Will Fries instead. They went with Will Fries the entire offseason. They didn't bring in any veteran depth to compete with him. I mean, Emile Kior Jr. was really the only guy they brought in who was an undrafted rookie out of Alabama, and he didn't even make it out of camp. So Will Fries kind of had the job given to him in camp, and he's impressed a lot this year. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that Will Fries has been, a top 5 guard in football by any means, but he's come in, he's taken over a spot that has been left vacant really since Mark Lewinsky left for the Giants. And Will Fries has been really solid this season. He's only allowed 17 pressures and nearly 400 pass blocking snaps this year. He's rated as a top 25 guard by Pro Football Focus this season, which again, doesn't sound amazing, but that's a starting caliber guard, when the Colts have really not had a starting caliber guard at right guard, since Mark Lewinsky left 2 years ago. So having Will Fries step in and be a really adequate player there at that right guard position has just been fantastic for this team. So he earns number one on this bright spots list because, again, a position that I think everyone was really concerned about going into the year, especially with a rookie quarterback, or what we thought was going to be a rookie quarterback back there for the Colts. Will Fries has come in and really solidified that right guard spot. And then talking about solidifying a spot on the Colts offensive line, we can't do this whole list without talking about Bernhard Raimann. Just been fantastic at left tackle. He's the 5th highest graded tackle in the NFL by Pro Football Focus. He's also allowed just 17 pressures this year and 337 pass blocking snaps. He's been fantastic in the pass blocking game. He's getting a lot better in the run game as well. I don't think he's playing as well as maybe a top 5 tackle like that grade would suggest, but I think when you're looking at his film, you're seeing a player who is just getting better every single week, and he doesn't look overwhelmed like he did last year. I mean, last year, Bernhard Raimann, when he was on the field, he just looked really, really overwhelmed by the power that he was facing, by the speed he was facing, by the length he was facing off the edge. He just wasn't really ready to be a starting left tackle. Now, when you're looking on this year, he's playing really square, really solid. He's competing on every single snap. And yes, he's still getting beat every now and then, but it's usually against like the top tier pass rushers where every tackle gets beat by, someone like a Josh Allen. Josh Allen's going to beat players. Myles Garrett beat him a couple times. Like, sure, those are guys who are going to beat you. But what you're seeing is when he's playing against, lesser pass rushers or pass rushers that he can win against, he's constantly winning all game long. I don't think he allowed a single pressure against New England Patriots this past week. We've seen in other games, he had a really good matchup with Jonathan Grenard back against Houston in week 2, where he didn't allow pressure. So Bernhard Raimann, really fantastic young left tackle. doing some really good things, and the sky is the limit for his play. Let's go over to the defense side of the ball now. We're going to talk about Dayo Odeyingbo. I know there's a few people listening who are big Dayo Odeyingbo fans, and we want to make sure we mention him early in this episode compared to some other episodes this week. But he leads the team right now with 6 sacks. If you guys actually look at Pro Football Focus, they have him with 8 sacks on the season because they count half sacks as full sacks. So Pro Football Focus has him with 8 sacks on the year through 10 games. That's a fantastic pace for him. His pass rush win rate was really low on the season, but the last 3 weeks it's climbed to around 17%, 18%, which is really, really strong for a player who rushes off the edge and rushes on the interior as well. We're seeing a lot of really high-level moments. I mean, there was 2 sacks these past 2 weeks. I know he's had 4 in the last 2 weeks, but there were 2 sacks where he just cleanly beat the right guard in front of him to get back in the backfield and get the quarterback within, it was probably like sacks within 2 seconds, from what we were able to see. Probably had to be like 2 of the fastest sacks the Colts have had this whole season. And that's what Dayo Odeyingbo has been bringing to the Colts defensive pass rush these past couple weeks. So really, really promising the last couple games for Dayo. He appears to be the next best pass rusher on the team lately behind DeForest Buckner. So if he can keep this up, I mean, obviously an extension in the near future is coming up for him, but if he can just keep this up in general, he has a real chance at hitting 10 sacks this year, which is fantastic for such a young player. I think he's only 23 years old still. So Hurricane Dayo Odeyingbo doing some fantastic things as a pass rusher lately, and hopefully he can keep that up the next couple stretch as the season, closes out this year. The last 2 players I want to mention with the bright spots list here are 2 rookies, 2 very, very different rookies. One is obviously Josh Downs. I know all of you guys have been really high on him all year, and yeah, there's a good reason to. He's got 43 catches on the season for 523 yards and 2 touchdowns, on pace for around 1,000 yards this year. I think the most impressive aspect of his game is he has 0 drops on the season, despite having such a high percentage of targets and getting a lot of looks in this offense. 0 drops on the year. Just a fantastic, fantastic slot player to have. Your quick win player. If you need positive yards on a first or second down, he's your guy. If you need that first down on third down, he's your guy. And we're starting to see him expand his role a little bit more in, more downfield shots, more vertical plays, getting past the sticks and getting some big catches for the team. So Josh Downs has been the biggest bright spot, I think, on this entire team this year. Obviously, if Anthony Richardson were playing, we'd be talking about Richardson in this, but I think Josh Downs has been the biggest bright spot and most promising aspect for the future that we could see on this Colts roster this year. The other rookie, though, 7th round rookie Jalen Jones. He's allowed just 13 catches on 23 targets this year to be caught. His 16.4 snaps per reception is the highest on the team. Doing some really, really good things out there as a starter. Again, 7th round pick should really not be starting for your team, especially at cornerback, especially as your number 1 outside corner the last couple weeks. But Jalen Jones has really held his own, and I've been really, really impressed with his play as of late. Really solid and strong corner, does a lot of good things, really explosive coming downhill, really violent with his tackling in the last couple weeks. I want to see him be a little more sure with his tackling, but a very violent tackler that loves to explode downhill. He's doing some really, really good things in Gus Bradley's scheme, and I'm excited to see the future with him, especially once Juju Brents comes back, because once him and Juju are back out there and you have your 1-2 punch at corner, I think there's going to be some good things out there for the Colts. But those are my 5 bright spots. You guys let me know in the comment section what you think. And, did I miss anybody? Should I add somebody to the bright spot list? You guys let me know there in the comments. But coming up, we're going to talk about 5 players that just need to step up a little bit going forward. They're not really the disappointments of the season, but they're just guys that, if the Colts are going to make this playoff push, we need to see a little bit more from them coming up here in just a second. Whenever the clock stops, that's time to order with DoorDash. Why root for your team on an empty stomach? Order with DoorDash and save on all your football watch party favorites. Get 50% off up to $10 your value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23, that's subject to change, terms apply. Whenever I'm in Indy hanging out with Jake, it's pretty common for us to order through DoorDash. Last time I went, we ordered from Portillo's, which is a really great place to get that Chicago-style food that I can't always get out here. I got a sandwich from there. It's awesome. I love Portillo's, and I can only really get it out there when I'm with Jake and Indy. So I know all you Indy natives love Portillo's out there. So again, if you're thinking of starting on DoorDash, we've got a great deal. Get 50% off up to $10 your value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Again, subject to change, terms apply. Don't forget to use code LOCKED23 for 50% off up to $10 your value when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change. Terms apply. Welcome back to this bye-week episode of Locked On Colts. I want to remind you guys that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, guys, before we get into this next segment talking about 5 players that need to step up, I do want to stipulate that pretty much every player on this list here, there's a good reason why their play has been down or why they've struggled this year or why, we need to see more from them. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm out here just bashing all these players and saying like, oh, they suck or they stink, because there's real reasons why they are underperforming this year or why they still need to perform at a higher level. It's just, I did want to stipulate that I don't want to come out that I'm just bashing these players baselessly and that I don't understand the context for it. And I think that segues perfectly into our first player here, which is linebacker Shaquille Leonard. I know that there are reasons why he's not Shaquille Leonard of old. He doesn't move the same way that he did. He's a much stiffer player than what he was before the nerve injuries, before the back surgeries, before actual reasons why he is struggling and why he's not Shaquille Leonard still. But at the end of the day, he's still a player who is paid to perform, who's getting put on the field, who's getting a ton of snaps, and who's talking to the media every single week about how he wants more snaps. He's still doing all those things, so we have to still grade him for what he's putting on the field. And what he's putting on the field right now is just not good enough. It's not horrendous. Like, it's not the worst linebacker play you'll see, but it's still not good enough for what the Colts need from their linebacker group. And there's a reason why he's not playing on third down right now is because he's not suited for those third down roles. He's not as great in his match coverages. He's not as good a mover as EJ Speed or Zaire Franklin. He doesn't explode downhill like those two. He's been slow getting out to the flats. He's not good at getting those tackles in space, which we saw the last 2 weeks, especially against Zeke Elliott the last game or whatever. There's 2 missed tackles in open space against him. So yeah, we just need to see more from Shaquille Leonard. I don't know if we will because, again, there are reasons why he's struggling because of that back injury, because of the nerve injury, because it's a defense he's never really played in before, and he's still trying to figure out his own role and his own style in this defense, and his confidence is low right now. But at the end of the day, we still need to see more from him if he's going to be on this team going forward after this season. So it's a big final stretch for Shaquille Leonard here. Hopefully he can turn it around because such a dynamic and great player when he plays, but we'll see. We'll see what Shaquille Leonard can do. I know we've talked about this topic a lot, but it's a very important one to keep talking on. Another one here is Kwity Paye, former first-round pick pass rusher. Started off the year red hot, had a lot of sacks, a lot of pass rush win rates, was pretty high. These last couple weeks since he came back from his concussion, it's just not been the same. And we kind of saw this last year with Kwity Paye, where he got off to just this crazy hot start where he was a fantastic pass rusher, and then the injury came to his ankle, I believe, and it just slowed him up for the entire season. Now we're looking at Kwity Paye this year, though. The lowest pass rush win rate among defensive ends on the team with only 8%. He's still doing some great things in the run game, just a fantastic run defender. So it's not like he's not giving any value to this team, but when you have Dio Dangbo performing as well as he is, you have Samson Ebukam still creating a lot of great things off the edge, DeForest Buckner being that superstar that he is. You want to see Kwity Paye starting to match that production that you're seeing from the other guys as a pass rusher. And he just hasn't done it yet so far. So hopefully Kwity Paye can turn it around. Again, I know the concussion is a real thing here, and there's a reason why he's probably struggled a little bit there. But again, former first-round pick, hasn't really had a huge career so far as a pass rusher. You want to see that next step from Kwity Paye in these final, 7-8 games here for the Colts. So big opportunity for Kwity Paye going forward. Another player, again, stipulate that this one, I understand why it's kind of a slow start for him, but we still have to talk about it. But Jonathan Taylor, the new highly paid running back here for the Indianapolis Colts, since coming back from the PUP list, he has 85 carries for 323 yards, which is only 3.8 yards per carry. I know the Colts have been easing him in because he is still recovering from that injury that he suffered last season, and he missed all of the offseason camp with it, and obviously ended up on the PUP list coming into the year. It's a new offense. The offensive line is struggling as of late to control in the run game because defenses are stacking the box right now. But still, I think you guys can all agree with me when we're watching Jonathan Taylor's last couple weeks. it doesn't look like Jonathan Taylor yet still. Like, he still looks like he's dancing around a little bit. He's not as explosive or as powerful as he looked, especially back in 2021. So you just want to see him get his legs back under him going forward. Maybe this bye week is a really good blessing in disguise for him. He can heal up a little bit more. He can rest a little bit more and maybe come out a little bit more explosive when he gets back on the field. But I still want to see him run with that same energy, that same decisiveness, that same explosion that we saw early in his career. I don't think we've seen that quite yet this year, but hopefully after the bye week, he can really come back strong and really hit some good things there and hit his stride down the stretch. I'm not too concerned about Jonathan Taylor, but it is just something to note because I think there are reasons why he's rushing for only 3.8 yards per carry right now, and a lot of it has to do with defenses stacking the box, but also I do think he can create a little bit more than what he currently is in this rushing game, if that makes sense. So, Jonathan Taylor is a player to watch down the stretch. He really needs to step up his game and get back to being the Jonathan Taylor that the Colts are, they're paying him to be. Two more here, but this one kind of engrosses a bunch of players. It's just something that really needed to be put in here was any defensive tackle behind Grover Stewart at this point, because oh man, I think we all knew it was going to be really bad behind Grover Stewart when Grover Stewart hit his suspension. But man, these last couple weeks, it has been brutal from a run defensive point of view. Now, pass rushing, it's been fine. We've seen Eric Johnson come away with a sack. We've seen Taven Bryan get some pressures. We've seen Adetomi Adebawore get some pressures and a sack as well. But in the run game, it has just been a train wreck. I mean, we're seeing what teams are doing now. They're just double teaming DeForest Buckner, and then they're just using a single team or maybe even a duo block as well on the other defensive tackle to drive that player 8 yards off the snap. There's just no chance for these Colts linebackers in the run game right now because that defensive tackle is just getting manhandled so effortlessly up front in the trenches. So I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's McTelvin Agim needs to come up or Taven Bryan and Eric Johnson just need to be playing better at this point, but we got to see more in the run game. I don't care if you're making tackles, but just hold your ground, don't get driven 10 yards off the ball. And we're calling that a win at this point. Grover Stewart should be back from his suspension in a couple weeks. So it doesn't need to be for the rest of the season. Just really these next couple weeks, these next 2 or 3 weeks when they're back out there, again, just plant your feet in the ground. I don't care. You have to super glue your feet to the ground just to stay in that spot, but please stop getting driven 10 yards off the ball and killing our linebackers in the run game. The Colts run defense has been predictably atrocious since Grover Stewart's suspension, and they just need one of these other defensive tackles to step up in some capacity in the run game. One more player to mention here, and it's only, again, I know there's real reasons why he's not playing super well because he's a backup caliber player, but Gardner Minshew just needs to step up his level of play if the Colts want to have a chance at making the playoffs. I think he's done some good things this year. I like that he keeps his eyes down the field when he's moving in the pocket. I like how, for the most part this year, the Colts offense has been operational with him in there, but turnovers have been an issue. 17 turnover-worthy throws this year, 6 interceptions, multiple fumbles. In these last 2 weeks, we've seen him play really skittish in the backfield. And, again, it's cut the turnovers down, but now we're seeing the offense not be operational under him. So he needs to find that sweet spot of not turning the ball over 5 times a game and still keeping the offense operational. Like, as of right now, he's either not having an operational offense or he's turning the ball over 5-6 times a game. So there needs to be some middle ground for the Colts to have a chance at making the playoffs this year. He's a veteran player, so I do think he can turn it around, but we'll have to see. I mean, again, there's a reason why he's a backup. There's a reason why he is having these struggles. So that's probably the most important thing to watch down this next stretch here to see if the Colts are going to make the playoffs, is if Gardner Minshew can find that middle ground between operational and turnover prone and just see what the Colts offense can do there. But coming up, guys, we're going to talk about the future outlook for this Colts team in 2023, look at some of the potential opponents that they're playing or just the opponents they're playing down the stretch and see, can this Colts team have a chance at making the 2023 playoffs? Guys, we spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. I'm thankful for that connection that we have. And today, I want our chat to be a little more personal. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications with Jase. You realize what that means? You are covered, my friend. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your generics for Cialis or Viagra prescription. And this is all possible because of our friends over at Jase Medical. Go online now at jasemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. Again, guys, you know how crazy this world is right now. It's really hectic, and the last thing you really need to be without is your medications, especially with, again, we just had COVID a couple years ago. We're still dealing with COVID right now, but we have so many crazy things going on in this world. It's just great to have medication on you at all times, especially for all of you guys listening that have kids. Just to have the generics for your medications for your kids, and any time of crisis. Jase Medical is great for that stuff. So if you or someone that you would love to get some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily med, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember, use promo code Locked On at $20 off of your purchase. Alrighty, my beautiful everydayers, we are back with this episode of Locked On Colts. Again, I'm your favorite co-host here, Zach Hicks from horseshoehollow.com, and we're here to talk about the Colts' remaining schedule and talk about kind of what our prediction or what our outlook is for this team for the rest of 2023. So after the bye week, they play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which, again, a winnable game, but not an easy win by any means. Then they have the Tennessee Titans after that, which divisional game on the road could be a tough for anyone there. Then they have a 3-game stretch that could be a little bit tricky, a couple road games in here against some good teams. They got at the Cincinnati Bengals. They got versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, which the Colts have always been cursed against, at the Atlanta Falcons. And then they close it out with 2 home games against the Raiders and the Texans. So I know that every metric says this is like one of the 3 easiest schedules left among the NFL, but this could be a tricky one where I think a lot of these teams that they're playing are around the same tier as the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think that many of these teams outside of maybe the Bengals are clearly above the Colts. But I do think when you look at the remaining schedule, you're seeing a lot of teams that are probably in that similar, tier, just area of the Colts. It's not like the last 2 weeks where the Colts were clearly better than the New England Patriots and very clearly better than the Carolina Panthers. We're seeing more evenly matched teams down the stretch here. So it could be a tricky one. And you could see the Colts, winning 5 of these games. You could see them winning 2 of these games. It really could go either way with this remaining schedule. But I think the big ones obviously are the 2 divisional games, the Titans and the Texans. You want to come out of those with some victories, obviously, for your AFC playoff race. And then you have some very winnable games with the Raiders with, Aiden O'Connell is going to be their quarterback with their interim head coach. You don't know how that's going to be going with 1 week left in the season. And then obviously the Bucs with Baker Mayfield. Those are some winnable games in there as well. But I think the biggest thing for the Colts, again, going forward is what are they going to get out of their own quarterback position with Gardner Minshew? They need Gardner Minshew to find that middle ground. And then what's their injury front going to look like? There's still quite a few injuries on this Colts team, and luckily they have this bye week to get healthy. Getting Juju Brents back would be huge. Obviously, getting Juju Brents would be massive for this team. Grover Stewart getting back from his suspension, I think, against the Cincinnati Bengals would be great for that final 4 to 5 game push. So getting him back would be big. And then you got some other players too. Drew Ogletree missed this past game with an injury. Jelani Woods still hasn't been activated this season. We still don't know if he's going to be activated this year. And then you got Josh Downs and Zaire Franklin that were still dealing with their injuries. The offensive line has been banged up. Ryan Kelly's in the concussion protocol. So this Colts team is dealing with quite a few injuries, and they could get a lot healthier out of the bye week, which could be huge for this final push here. But I think when we're looking at this final schedule, again, it's very winnable. Obviously, it's all very losable too when you have a backup quarterback as your starter. But I think it's an interesting thing to ask you guys and to kind of look at realistically is, you're sitting at this team with the Colts. They're 5-5. Obviously, this year is probably not your Super Bowl season because, again, you lost your quarterback early in the season. You're still a competitive team, which is great, but you're probably not that Super Bowl caliber team. If, as a fan, are you rooting for losses to get that higher draft pick to help your young quarterback when he gets back next year? Or are you rooting to get the playoffs and make some noise this year, even if you're not going to maybe win the Super Bowl? Me personally, and again, you guys can tell me in the comment section. I think it's a really interesting conversation to have. But me personally, I think I would prefer this team to get some wins down the stretch here, try to get into the playoffs if they can, because I think starting off the new tenure of your head coach with a playoff appearance, with positive wins and just a positive finish to the season is more influential for the future than the 10th pick versus the 17th pick or something, or the 10th pick versus the 20th pick, whatever that's going to end up being. I would like to see this Colts team make a push for the playoffs again and get into the game. I don't care if they win much in the playoffs. I mean, I prefer if they win the whole thing, obviously, but I got to be realistic about this. Obviously, I don't think that's going to happen this year. But I would like to see this team push for that playoff spot. This is a prime opportunity. They can win a lot of these games. They can compete with anybody, which we've seen. They beat the Ravens earlier this season. They're a good team. You just want to see them obviously step up in these final stretch here and hopefully get into the playoffs. But you guys let me know in the comment section, are you rooting for that higher draft pick? I mean, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. is out of the question at this point. So you can't come in the comments and say, no, lose for Marvin Harrison Jr. They're not going to fall to the 3rd overall pick. So they're not going to get him. But do you guys want them to get like a top 10 pick and just lose out? Or I feel like playoffs are just more impactful for this team at this point. It's good to just turn this whole thing around from where they were last year with their 4-win season to making the playoffs, or again, getting close to the playoffs. 9-win season, I think would be very positive for Shane Steichen in year one with a backup quarterback starting pretty much the entire year. So, I think the outlook is positive for the rest of the year. I think they can win these games. I think they're capable of them. I think their defense is playing better as of late, obviously against 2 bad offenses, but it's still playing better. I think their offense has some things to work out, but once they get healthier on offense, I think they'll be fine. So, yeah, I think I'm feeling pretty optimistic about this, which usually is the precursor to disaster on this show whenever I'm feeling optimistic, but. You guys let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you think this team wins 1 to 2 games down the stretch and gets a high draft pick? Do you think they win 4, 5, 6 and make the playoffs? Like, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. I'm excited to hear what you guys have with that. Everydayers, I think that's all we have for today. Again, talking Colts and at the bye week, talking about players that have impressed, players that need to step up, and looking at the future and saying, I think this team can make the playoffs and I want to see them in the playoffs. I'd rather see them in the playoffs than missing it and getting that high draft pick. I just prefer seeing a playoff run, or at least a close to playoff run in Shane Steichen's first year. So Everydayers, again, want to let you guys know that Locked On has launched a first ever national sports 24/7 streaming service, streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here with you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports streaming service 24/7 streaming channel. And again, Locked On Colts listeners, I appreciate you guys joining me today. If you guys don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks2, all on X/Twitter, whatever the heck we call it now. And also subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here bright and early tomorrow morning.